Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back. In today's video, I'm going to be going over 10 building tips that are going to make you a lot better player. This is a video that I have been meaning to make for a while because there are some tips in here that I haven't seen many people cover before, if ever. And it's a video that I believe will help a lot of people. But if you do go on to enjoy today's video or it does help you anyway, a like is definitely appreciated. And consider subscribing because I'm on the road to 1 million subscribers. Also, my next video will most likely be a setup tour. So if that's something you want to see, definitely subscribe with notifications on. And you can use code Flea in the item shop if you do want to support more of these tips and tricks videos. I know it's been a while since I made one, but you guys really seem to like them. But yeah, that's gonna be about it for the intro. My name is Flea and let's get right into these tips. Alright, now tip number 1 is learn building placements. This is something I haven't seen many people mention in their videos because it is something people naturally learn over time, but it's also something that's really easy to forget about. So let me just show you some examples. There are so many cool and unique building placements that I don't see people use that often, but just starting off really simple, something like learning a building placement would be if you're looking at a wall, you should know for a fact that if you're looking at the bottom half of the wall, your pyramid is going to place on the ground. If you're looking at the top half of the wall, the pyramid is going to place above you. The same tip applies to floors. So if I pull out my floor, I know that looking at the bottom half of the wall is going to place it below me. And if I just go over to the top half of the wall, it's now going to place above me. This is a super useful tip for, let's say, if you're tunneling. A lot of people do take advantage of this building placement method in tunneling. So which means if you want to place a floor above and below you, you know that you can look here and place a floor below you and only go up a tiny bit and place a floor above you. So rather than looking down and up, when you're tunneling, all you have to do is just look below halfway and above halfway and you'll get those easy placements. So using that in tunneling would look something like this. Another example of taking advantage of those simple building placements will be stuff like walls. So if you want to place a wall in front of you and to the side, instead of doing this, what a good player would instead do is they'd look here and they'd look there. So instead of looking over here and over here, they're keeping it really short by just looking at the corner of the wall. It's just the little things like that that'll instantly separate a good player from a bad player. But then also under the building placements tip is you then have the advanced building placements. So this is stuff like just knowing you can place a pyramid over your wall like this, as well as one over here and one over here. This is a super useful thing to know and can be used in so many different ways. Another example of learning advanced building placements would be like, let's say you're coming out of a 90, just knowing that you can place these ramps here, as well as these very far away pyramids, and it's just stuff like this that will give you that edge in building. Some of the placements you can get with building is actually quite fascinating. Actually just sitting down and learning these placements can develop a really unique playstyle that people probably haven't ever seen before. I also see a lot of creative warriors and competitive players take advantage of these advanced building placements. So definitely getting creative and try this out. You never know what you might find. Alright, so the next tip we have, it kind of ties in conjunction with the first one. Well, in fact, all these tips tie in with each other. But tip 2 is piece control. So what piece control basically means is placing pieces first before your opponent and taking control of them. The creative warrior, in my opinion, that has the best piece control is Tweaks. Piece control basically also means just being one step ahead of your opponent at all times. So things like placing a pyramid before them or placing a wall before them. So as soon as you have that piece, you're in control of that piece, which means you can edit it. I'll throw some examples up on screen from my man Tweaks. Definitely go check him out because he is insane at this game. His piece control is just on point. It always looks like he's one step ahead of his opponent. So pretty much in order to get good piece control, you just want to place as many building pieces as you can, because the more pieces you have, the more control you have over the fight. I know this isn't a practical tip for in-game because you only have limited mats, but definitely for creative, placing as many pieces as you can. Make sure that your opponent can't edit on you, and if you place more pieces, you have more control over the fight. But don't be mistaken, because piece control isn't only a creative thing. So let's say you're box fighting your opponent and they're inside this box. Having piece control would be things like placing ramps either side. So if your opponent tries to box out, so let's say I'm my opponent and I'm getting pressured inside this 1x1. If I want to branch out and go into a new 1x1, this ramp is actually blocking me from placing the cone. So this top person has piece control over this ramp now, which means I only have to replace the floor in order to kill their opponent. Another quick example of piece control would be something like replacing their pyramid and then, you know, going over here to pressure their wall or something and then going back up. And now because you've already got control over this, you only need to replace one thing. The more pieces you have control over the fight, the more ways you have of eliminating your opponent. All right, now the next tip I have for you guys is something I've never seen anyone talk about before, and it's probably the single most important tip that has helped me the most with my building. And that tip is to learn turbo building properly. And what I mean by that is that you all know what turbo building is, so you all know you can just hold down one button and it'll just build everything for you. But what a lot of people don't know is how to actually use turbo building effectively, and this is super important, especially for high ping players. So basically the thing is with building on Fortnite is everything you place has an initial delay. So the first build of anything you place, no matter what piece it is, it'll always have a delay on it. But once you've placed that first piece, the rest of the pieces will place a lot quicker. This is what turbo building is essentially, is that your first placement will always have that little bit of delay, but then as long as you're holding down your piece placement buttons, everything will place a lot quicker. And basically how to turbo build effectively is place down a piece, and before you've let go of that piece, you're supposed to place down the next piece, and then let go of the previous one, place down the next one, let go of the previous one, place down the next one. So pretty much you should always have your finger down on at least one piece when you're building, and this will ensure that you're always in turbo building mode and your pieces will place as fast as possible. So for example, this is what 90s would look like without turbo building properly. So as you can see and probably hear, the builds aren't placing as fast as they possibly can, but if I compare that to turbo building properly, as you can see, not only does it look faster, but it also sounds faster. All the pieces are placing a lot quicker, and that's what effectively using turbo building looks like, but it can be done in so many ways. Doing stuff that normally looks really hard on my ping, I make it look really easy. In fact, me just practicing this one tip and making sure I'm turbo building properly has made me look like I'm playing on like 20 to 30 ping lower than what I actually play on. Just really quick, a good way to practice turbo building is doing a double quad layer ramp rush. Practicing a double quad layer is a good way to practice turbo building because it ensures that you've always got at least one finger down to activate that turbo building. If you are a high ping player, I highly recommend you do try this, as like I said, this is the thing that has helped me the most. Now for the next tip, tip number 4, now this is a big one, is have an unpredictable playstyle. This is one that definitely takes a bit of thinking and practice, but if you get the hang of it, it will definitely put you so far ahead of your opponent. So for an unpredictable playstyle, what I mean by this is, let's say you get into a double ramp. Now this is something that a lot of people get into, and this is just an example. And let's say you always go to the right. So you always like do a jump out to the right after you go into a double ramp. If you verse your enemy enough times, especially in creative, they will know which way you're going before you've even jumped there, and they can predict it. And then all of a sudden they're blocking you off, already ready for the edit because they know where you're gonna go. Whereas if you took the time to not only maybe go out right, but then also learn to go out left, and maybe even learn to go out forward, and, you know, practice some forward retakes, it can really throw your opponent off and they'll never know which way you're gonna go. And this just ensures that you're not a predictable player when people are versing you. Same thing applies in a real game. If you're doing the same stuff that you always see people do, a good player is actually gonna predict what you're doing before you even do it. So like I said, this just comes down to learning new things, and the most unpredictable playstyle is the one you make up yourself. So just invent some new cool ways that are personal to you, of your ways of maneuvering around fights and getting high ground, and that will make you a very unpredictable player. Alright, and the next tip I have for you is better player movement. So me personally, this is something I've only started improving recently, is that being conscious of your player's movement will ensure that you're always going to be in the right spot at the right time and not falling off your builds. So for all the videos I make, posting 5 times a week, I may not be the best creative player in the world, but when I want to be, I can still be pretty good. And when I've been playing for consecutive days in a row, maybe like 3 or 4 days in a row, going for clips from montage, that's obviously when I'm playing my best and when I have the best player movement. Bad player movement would look something like if I'm trying to do a 90 and I just fall off my builds, whereas good player movement would look something like this. So this tip's all about practicing those hard moves you know will get you a lot better analog stick movement. It will take you a long time to get used to, but in my experience, this is the best way in learning to have the best player movement. Right, now the last quick tip we're going to finish on is track your enemy. Now we all know how to track your enemy when you have high ground. Obviously, you just stay above them and protect yourself so they can't shoot you. But what I'm referring to in this tip is track your enemy when you're at low ground. This is a super important thing I see wager players do. So they'll actually always know where their enemy is, and they'll always do retakes in accordance to where they are. So they're not just doing, you know, the generic retakes and they have no clue where they're going. They're just doing retakes until they get high ground, because that's a really easy way to be eliminated by your opponent. It's just doing the generic retakes everyone does. But what separates a good builder from a great builder is actually doing retakes in accordance to where your enemy is. So let's just say, for example, my enemy's behind me on high ground chasing me. I'm obviously not going to do this retake because yes, I am protected from the front and the top, but my back is entirely exposed. So if my enemy's chasing me, that just leaves me exposed to him. Instead, I'd more so want to do a retake that's away from them, and then maybe protect myself as I come around, and then go into something completely different that'll also protect me from now they're above me in this direction. And you always just want to know where your enemy is, so you're always doing the right retakes for the right situation. But anyway guys, it's going to be about it for 6 advanced building tips in Fortnite. I was planning on putting a lot more tips in this video, but I actually went in depth on each tip, so it did take up a bit more time. But hopefully you found this helpful. Let me know if you did by dropping a like, and comment below which tip helped you the most, because I'd love to know. And yeah, that is going to be about it for this video. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.